Hey, you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the first new moon of the year, first new moon of 2026. This is coming up here on Sunday, January 18th. The new moon peaks at 11:51 a.m. Pacific time. And this is coming through the sign of Capricorn, 28 degrees Capricorn. Now, to be honest with you, I genuinely mean it when I say that I think this is a really, really great astrological lineup for the first new moon of the year. And there's many, many reasons that I'm saying that, but just the one that really stands out to me most is we're getting a lot of Earth energy. What I mean by that is there's a lot of planets coming through Earth signs. This will be the only new moon in an Earth sign that we have all the way until May. I think it's May 16th. And I think we all need to tap in and learn to grow in an earthly way because I mean it when I say that 2026 and 2027, basically right after this new moon, we're going to have a lot of static in the air, a lot of chaos going on. And I say that because we're going to have a lot of stuff going on in air signs. Okay, so, and as many of you know, anytime we have a new moon, it's a time to be manifesting new beginnings and growth that are related to the sign in which the new moon takes place. The sign of Capricorn's like the ambitious earth sign, the sign that's ambitious with things that involve our earthly responsibilities, the material world. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this recording is first of all, I'm going to break down the sign of Capricorn for you so you know what you're working with here. But then I'm going to pull up the chart and I'm going to show these really, really great combination of aspects. We've got something called a minor grand trine. Basically, this new moon and Mercury and Mars are making a very harmonious a trine over to Uranus and Taurus, which that stimulates the energy of this new moon, basically activates. Let's say you're manifesting growth related to this sign of Capricorn, you write it down in your journal. Well, Uranus is sending a ray over there that stimulates that energy. Then we've also got sextile rays going from the sun and the moon, also Mercury and Mars, over to Saturn and Neptune. Okay, first of all, and they're in Pisces. It's like Neptune in Pisces, finishing up in Pisces is the last video I'll be making with Neptune's in the sign of Pisces. Neptune's just about to move into the sign of Aries, like a week after this new moon. And so Neptune helps us create visions, like laying in your bed at night, like what am I envisioning for myself? Maybe you're making a vision board, even if it's an actual physical board, or, you know, in your own mind, what you're envisioning for yourself. Saturn there next to Neptune says, okay, let's actually do the work to make it happen. Like, I hope that makes sense. Neptune, especially in the sign of Pisces, is like, what are you dreaming up for yourself? But Saturn's right there next to Neptune and saying, hey, okay, we can do that, but we need to actually put in the work to do it. And there's an opportunistic connection going on between this new moon and Saturn and Neptune. So really interesting stuff. I'm excited to show you the chart. And then I'm also going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Capricorn because these parts of our bodies become sensitized in some way, shape, or form anytime anything up in the sky is transiting through the sign of Capricorn. And for this transit, we've got Sun, we've got Moon, we've got Mercury, and we've got Mars all in the sign of Capricorn. So it's a good idea to be paying a little extra attention to these parts of our bodies. That said, I will be mentioning some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our bodies in the days surrounding this transit. And I will also be mentioning some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Capricorn. As so many of you know, this is something I've been doing for it's so close to being a full decade that every single new moon, I haven't missed a single one. I pull on my journal, I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to the sign that the new moon takes place in. And if you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back and review the video recording to see which area of your life this new moon, this new energy, this opportunity for growth, new beginnings, which theme of your life is this activating, which house in your natal chart. I always incorporate that into my journal entry. And then I like to take some gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through, or just the overall astrological forces we're receiving, and put them on top of my journal. I mean, this is truly something people have been working with gemstones for eons, okay? And yes, it's very metaphysical, but basically those gemstones are making a more powerful or harmonious connection to those astrological forces, to those cosmic rays, I always leave a full extensive list of stones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through in the description below. And if you don't have any of these gemstones, please do not feel discouraged or you're missing out on something. I truly have been collecting gemstones for about 20 years now, so I do have quite the collection. Although there's still some gemstones out there that I want to bring into my life. I'm just being a little bit picky about them. The ones that are a little more pricey than my collection that I've got now. Regardless, a new moon is a really good time to be manifesting the gemstones that you want into your life. I would be writing this stuff down in your journal. Okay, so there's that. And I know not everybody's got a journal laying around. Even if you've got the back of a piece of envelope, like a piece of junk mail or something like that, writing it down on that. I've had people over the years, it makes me feel good because I've had over the years, I don't know, over the last like 7 years or so, many people have either, DM'd me on Instagram, some sort of a social media thing, or sent me an email, or even my close friends send me a text message of a picture of like them writing down what they're manifesting with some gemstones. And then, a month later or whatever, them right back and say, oh my God, Aaron, I got the job. Or, oh my God, he actually said yes. We're going on the guy that I've been wanting to date for years. We're finally going on a date. I've had all kinds of funny little things like that come through from people from writing this stuff down. I will say this. The universe always tends to throw a little bit of surprise at us, but still writing these things down. It's like, that's like manifesting 101, writing it down. Of course, where focus goes, energy flows. We all know that as well. But I do think you're going to have better results from writing this stuff down. Okay, so there's that. Now, let's get into this. The sign of Capricorn is what we call the cardinal earth sign. This is what I'm talking about. Cardinal means it comes through with force, okay? In the element of earth, this is about our earthly responsibilities, and responsibilities as it not only just going to work or that sort of thing, but establishing, a place to live. It's like basically it's kind of like the CEO of the zodiac sign of Capricorn, because it's all about structure and building what you want for yourself. Very ambitious energy. In fact, the traditional motto for the sign of Capricorn is I use. I do have 2 books that are very modern astrology based that have used the word or use the motto I build for the sign of Capricorn, which I can definitely understand that and support that, because the sign of Capricorn is very much about what you want to build for yourself. But the traditional motto I use, it's really about using what you already have in your environment to build what you want to build. It's like this sign of Capricorn is more about, instead of being like, well, I really want to build a house, but I don't have a hammer. Well, the sign of Capricorn is the energy of, well, what can you substitute a hammer with? What do you got around here? What going to work with? Let's make a hammer out of some sticks and a rock or something like that. Like that's Capricorn energy. Or I've been wanting to build an online business, but I can't pay for a website. There's free options to build a website. Just what you have to work with to start with. That's Capricorn energy. I use what I have in my environment to build what I want to build. Now it's ruled by Saturn. Saturn, talked about this a little bit ago. Okay, Saturn is what influences things like structure and discipline and responsibilities. Okay, that's Saturn's all about our earthly work here. And yes, Saturn can be a little bit harsh. Saturn definitely has a bad reputation in astrology. He's like the one that brings fear or a bag of tears or something like that, because Saturn's no fun, but really he can be a bringer of wisdom if we take care of our responsibilities. The sign of Capricorn, that's all about that. Saturn can influence fear. The sign of Capricorn can definitely manifest with some fear. We've had a lot of Capricorn energy really since 3rd week of December, flown through the cosmos. Okay. And depending on how it's hitting your natal chart, you may have been experiencing some fear, like, oh, I don't have enough money for holidays, or, that sort of thing could definitely go on with this Capricorn energy. But it's really about, how can I fix this? How can I make this better for myself? I need the ambition, tapping into that ambition with the sign of Capricorn. In traditional astrology, the sign of Capricorn is represented by this sea goat, which I definitely support that. But I think in today's day and age, well, the modern representation is the mountain goat. And I think that helps people understand the energy or the influence of the sign of Capricorn. The mountain goat, that if you ever watch a mountain goat climb up a mountain incredibly strategically, taking advantage of every foothold and getting to the top to be on top. Those mountain goats want to be up at the top of the mountain or just on top of something, really like a boss. That's this sign of Capricorn. So, how do you want to grow in these ways? This is such, and again, it's like I'm thinking about the chaos that is about to unfold through 2026 and 2027. So, what can we build for ourselves that really, it's like keeps us strong? Keep the sign of Capricorn is strong. Okay, so there's that. I hope that gave you some ideas on how you want to manifest growth related to this sign of Capricorn. And also keep in mind that this is very, very unique to each and every one of us. And a lot of this is going to depend on how it's coming through your own natal chart. But okay, as a reminder, this is January 18, 2026 at 11:51 a.m. Pacific time. Now, if you are somebody who wants to take the time to write out, what you're trying to manifest, I have seen the best results if I'm doing it like a couple, maybe 2 to 3 hours before the new moon. That doesn't always, sometimes I end up doing it the night before because I just feel called to do it, and if you're seeing this a day or two after the new moon, it doesn't mean it's too late. I would still write it down. But I do notice that I have, like I said, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. This coming either June or July will actually be 10 years that I've done this with every single new moon. And I'll go back and I'll look and I'll be like, you know what? That one, I wish I would have done a little bit like closer to the new moon, that sort of thing. So you might want to see what time this is coming through in your own time zone. Now, if you're new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. With that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. This is as if somebody went out and took a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Okay, these right here are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like there's Saturn, there's Neptune, there's Chiron, there's Uranus, there's Jupiter. When we go in the wheel just a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all these planets and celestial bodies will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. Okay, so let's start here. This right here is a symbol for the moon. For the sun. This right here is a symbol for the moon. The moon symbol is pretty easy to identify because it looks like a crescent moon. And there's the sun. The sun, depending on what software you're using or if you're using an astrology app, sometimes these can look a little bit different, but for the most part, the sun's always going to be a circle with a dot in the middle. And the moon's, again, obviously easy to find. This right here is the glyph for the sign of Capricorn. That's what you're going to want to look for in your natal chart. Which house when the houses are these things that look like a slice of pie, which house in your natal chart do you see that glyph for the sign of Capricorn come through? If you're working with Placidus or equal sign, then you're going to want to see where 28 degrees 44 minutes comes through in your own natal chart, which I have no problems with Placidus whatsoever. However, I will say when it comes to these lunar transits, I do find that the whole sign house system tends to show itself a little more accurately. So there's that. Now, anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the exact same spot. And the way it works, the reason why working with new moons works is because the sun takes a whole year to go around this zodiac, yet the moon boogies around here every single month. So with that said, every single month, the moon catches up to the sun and then crosses over him. Okay, the sun is the father. The moon is the mother. She's distributing this energy every time that they go exactly conjunct. It's the father and the mother coming together. And as the moon goes around through the rest of the zodiac, she's distributing this energy for growth. It's an energetic baby that grows over the next 6 months till we have the full moon in the sign of Capricorn. Okay, so at 28 degrees Capricorn, we are in the third decan of this Capricorn energy. It's very, very end of Capricorn season, and happy solar return to all you Capricorns out there. I hope you had a wonderful solar return. But in the third decan, this gives it a little bit of a twist of Virgo and energy, which Virgo is just slightly similar to Capricorn, except it's a lot more adaptable. So it does provide a little bit more of an energy for adapting into something new. Okay, now, right off the bat, what we see is this right here is Mercury and this right here is Mars. They are very, very close to the sun and the moon, about 2 degrees away. Now, first of all, let's start with Mercury. Mercury is our mental function. You're listening to me talk right now. Mercury is taking this information in through your afferent nerves and delivering it into your spinal cord. And let's say you want to go tell your friend about this information a little bit later. Mercury is going to find that file of information and bring it back out for you to communicate. He's a messenger of the gods. He's a busy character. He's going quick. In fact, Mercury has a very big influence on, in essence, the entire nervous system. There's certain parts of the nervous system that Mercury has, the afferent nerves especially, has a very, very specific rulership over. But if you think about, your nervous system and how quick everything is moving around, that's Mercury. Okay. That's Mercury's energy. And with that said, here's Mars, which, let's see here. This is going to be approximately, oh gosh, just hours leading up to this new moon. Mercury's going to jump over Mars, or they're going to have a Mercury Mars cazimi. That's a Mars and Mercury together. Mars doesn't, or I should say, Mercury gets irritated by Mars. The reason for that is because Mars is the planet of war. Mars is aggressive. Mars's energy is hot and dry. Okay. Mars's energy is an aggressive energy. And I don't mean to make Mars sound bad. We absolutely need Mars. Mars is what makes us take action. But if you can picture Mercury just trying to get his job done, trying to deliver information all over the place, and all of a sudden this like beaming red hot energy comes over him. So with that said, if you do have something prominent, especially if it's your sun, your moon, or your own natal Mercury, or maybe your Mars near 26 degrees Capricorn, I would be mindful about getting overstimulated, especially because of these trines going down to Uranus. But I will say that the sign of Capricorn does tend to slow this stuff down. Mars exalts in the sign of Capricorn. This is Mars. One of the reasons, I mean, there's mathematical reasons for it, but one of the main reasons we can understand why Mars exalts in the sign of Capricorn, because Capricorn, again, it's Earth and it wants to do things like slowly. It wants to plan things out. It wants to, still has that ambition, but it doesn't it doesn't just go after things fast and furiously. So Mars kind of tones down a little bit. It's like basically the sign of Capricorn saying, whoa, 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 Mars, we want to use some strategic, ness moving forward here. Don't be so fast and furious. So with that said, we do like Mars here, but it's very active. In fact, I would say that probably most of us, a little bit of a kind of stimulation going on. But overall, it's a good thing. And in fact, what's going to happen here is, well, I'll just point this out right now. I'll maybe talk about it a little bit more later. But this is really just the last day and a half of Capricorn season. And just days after this transit, just hours after this transit, the moon's going to go into the sign of Aquarius, transit over Pluto and Venus. Then the sun moves into the sign of Aquarius, and Mars and Mercury move into the sign of Aquarius. So this Aquarius is very hyperstimulated. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. I'll just say this, that's why main reason I'm talking about, we have all this earth energy. It's the very end of this earth sign, like a day and a half left of this earth energy. That's why I'm talking about staying grounded while we have this opportunity for that. Now, when we come down here, and by the way, this thing right here, that's the midheaven, which that will change depending on your location. So I'm not going to talk about the midheaven, but this right here is Uranus. Okay. Now these blue lines that are going from here to here, I mean, really what we've got is it's a minor grand trine. When we've got trines and sextiles all making this triangle here, it's a minor grand trine. And overall, it creates opportunity. Okay. Now, Uranus is in retrograde. Uranus, again, Uranus is very, very stimulating. That's why we talk about the sign of Aquarius is stimulated, because one of its rulers is Uranus. Now, radical, rebellious, revolutionary energy is what we get from Uranus. Uranus is in retrograde. When Uranus is in retrograde, he's kind of extra spazzy. In fact, if you had a proper telescope, you can actually see when Uranus goes in retrograde, literally like the light flips upside down. It looks like he's doing all kinds of spazzy stuff, which is very Uranus energy. And I will say this, that Uranus is in the sign of Taurus until the very end of April of 2026. The sign of Taurus, it's the sign of money. I do think that between now and the end of April, there's going to be something that happens involving the collective's finances, especially if it has something to do with like digital currency. Maybe there's going to be some sort of a crash or something like that. I do know a lot of people have been talking about, oh my gosh, there's going to be an economic crash this year. Maybe. But I think it might be a little bit more radical and shocking and revolutionary. I think more and more and more people are really starting to wake up to the overall just corruption period that we're all experiencing here, at least in the normal parts of the world. When I say that, I'm talking about the elites and the, well, for lack of a better term, the elites and the billionaires might not be having the same kind of experience, but a lot of people are really, they're so down. They've just, it's been very, very, very obviously inflation, everything's expensive. We can go on and on and on. And I think people are just to the point of being so frustrated about it that there will be a revolution around these things. Okay. But going back to these trines, that's Uranus saying, hey, I'm going to activate this stuff. And in a good way, I'm going to stimulate this energy, especially if it's something like inspiring a revolution. Okay, then we've got here Saturn and Neptune, which they are traveling fairly close together, kind of even going up into March. But Saturn, Neptune here is only in the sign of Pisces for like another week or so after this, maybe even less than that, after this new moon. And so he's finishing up in the sign of Pisces. Neptune in Pisces, especially, is Neptune period can be great for dreaming things up. I have visions. This is what I dream up for myself. But alone, Neptune does not have the force to bring the visions into fruition. Okay, you'll notice when people have a really strong Neptune in their natal chart, they'll like, oh, I've dreamed this up for myself. This is my dream home, my dream family, my dream job, whatever it is. But it sometimes can be difficult to actually make it happen. However, Saturn here will make it happen. It's like Neptune in Pisces, especially 29 degrees, that anaretic degree. Neptune saying, okay, what are you dreaming up for yourself? And then Saturn says, sure, Neptune, we can dream that up, but we need to put in the work to do it. That's Saturn's job. He forces us to work, okay? Interestingly, in the sign of Pisces, Pisces is the mystic. Okay, so a little bit of a spiritual twist coming through with this earthly ambition and revolutionary stimulation. Okay, these green lines that go from here to here, those are the sextiles. They're very, very opportunistic connections. And again, these are going from Mars and Mercury and the moon and the sun over to Saturn and Neptune and then down here to Uranus. And there's that trine. That's what makes it the minor grand trine. Okay, so there's that. I hope that made sense. And not only that, but if you've got something prominent, I mean, it could, I'm more thinking like your sun, your moon, your Mercury, maybe your Mars or your Venus. Maybe it could happen with your Saturn, your rising sign between 26 degrees 26 to 29 degrees Capricorn. I'm going to go with 27 up to 29 degrees 59 minutes Pisces, or between, let's go to 26 to 29 degrees Taurus. If you've got something prominent in those degrees of those signs, this is an extra powerful, super powerful new moon for you because of these aspects that are going on. Okay, hope that made sense. Let's go on up here and talk about Venus and Pluto. So here's Venus, who has just entered the sign of Aquarius, okay? Which Venus in Aquarius is interesting. Sometimes this can make people have a desire for like, ideas. I love this idea. I've got an invention that I would love to create. That sort of thing can come through. But literally the day after this new moon, Venus jumps over Pluto. So that's a super tight conjunction. Let's break this down. Pluto, it is in essence like the destroyer. Pluto creates a death and rebirth process. I don't mean to make that sound scary. We're always experiencing Pluto's energy, but that's just what he does. And again, it's like when we take Venus, the planet of love, she's going to jump over Pluto, maybe kind of tone down some of his aggression. But then just days after this new moon, the sun, the moon, well, actually, again, the moon will transit over Pluto just hours after this new moon. But then we're going to have Mercury and Mars all enter into the sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius, it's it's a very electrical energy. It's a very revolutionary energy. It's actually the sign of humanity. It's very group oriented. It's the sign of revolutionary changes. And so with all this Aquarius energy that's just about to come through, it's very, very electrical. And that's why I'm talking about let's get grounded on the night of this new moon, or even just the days leading up to this new moon and the day of this new moon is a perfect time to go outside, put your feet on the ground, get grounded, meditate, that sort of thing. Because we have some very wiry energy coming through, electrical energy coming through. I think that there's going to potentially be sometime in the month of late January to early February. I kind of feel like there's going to be something that happens with either like communication through the internet, something involving the internet, or something with electricity, or something of that nature that kind of shocks people. Okay, now, where should we go next? Let's go down here to Jupiter. So Jupiter is Jupiter is also in retrograde, okay? In fact, the only things we have in retrograde other than the nodes, North and South node, are almost always in retrograde, but Jupiter and Uranus are the only retrogrades. So that's kind of nice. Jupiter is the expander. Jupiter brings abundance, okay? And he works with his greatest strength in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter is very charitable here, especially with things like philosophy or wisdom or things that expand your consciousness, especially if it involves some sort of empathy. The sign of Cancer has a lot to do with empathy. But while Jupiter's in retrograde, especially if you have something very prominent, again, sun, moon, rising, Mercury, something like that, of course, it depends on what it is, on how this would really come into fruition here. However, it might be a time to kind of reevaluate the things that you've learned, reevaluate something that has, maybe you've been exposed to something that made you feel like you were clever, or some wisdom, or something philosophical, or potentially something that has to do with religion. It might be a good time to reevaluate that. But ultimately, if you have something near 18 degrees Cancer in your natal chart, you might be receiving something that has to do with abundance. It totally depends on what the thing is in your natal chart and what house it's coming through and how that thing is aspected. But overall, 18 degrees Cancer, Jupiter. I'm appreciating Jupiter in Cancer until, the end of June of 2026. I think it's almost like our saving grace, because Jupiter is the great benefic and he works with great strength in the sign of Cancer. Okay. Now, let's go over to Chiron quickly here. So Chiron finally out of retrograde. I can't tell you how many people I know that were born with their sun near like 23 degrees Aries that have been through a lot, like almost like healing crisis sort of thing going on. I actually know two people that have had to go into, well, I'll just say a special kind of care needed for them while Chiron retrograded over their sun. Now, with that said, Chiron is the wounded healer. He wants us to heal. I mean, I got something in my eyeball, pardon me. He does influence wounds from early childhood, but as he goes around the zodiac, he provides us with an opportunity to heal from those wounds. That's what he ultimately wants. The sign of Aries is the pioneer. It's the self-starter. It's the cardinal fire sign. So while Chiron is finishing up in the sign of Aries, and what's going to happen in 2026 is Chiron's actually going to pop his head into the sign of Taurus and then retrograde back. And then finally in 2027, Chiron will be completely done in the sign of Taurus. So that said, Chiron really doesn't have that much time left in the sign of Aries. So I think this is a very, very optimal time to be working on healing ourselves or our own healing journey. I would never discourage people from seeking guidance for their healing journey, but on the same token, just revved up, fired up. In fact, these are a little bit of weak square, but there's squares, a little bit of a T-square with these squares, these red lines going up to all this new moon energy, and then also going down here to Jupiter, and then these guys are fairly opposing each other. That It's almost like a pointing energy at Chiron. These guys are all pointing energy. And again, it's very unique to each and every one of us. But if you got something near 22 degrees Aries in your natal chart, get that healing journey going. I feel very, very inspired by Chiron finishing up in the sign of Aries. Okay, lastly here, let's talk about these nodes. The North Node, 9 degrees Pisces. The South Node, 9 degrees Virgo. If you have anything near 9 degrees Pisces in your natal chart, recognize that that North Node is pumping more Pisces energy onto that thing. Now, this can be great for somebody who's on some taking on a spiritual practice or something that involves psychic powers or intuition. However, the sign of Pisces also can have a lot to do with things like addiction or substance abuse. And so if that's something that's going on in your life, you might want to be extra mindful about this North Node. North Node will be going through the sign of Pisces all the way till the end of July of 2026. So we're all receiving this heavy dose of Pisces energy, but especially if that's hitting something in your natal chart. And this keeps coming to mind because I've actually, over the past month, 2 months or so, I've had quite a few clients that have come to me and said that they've been drinking too much, or they've been indulging in, too many of their prescription medication, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, woo, that North Node in Pisces. So be mindful of that. Opposite that, South Node going through the sign of Virgo. If you've got anything near 9 degrees Virgo, recognize that that South Node works as a drain point. It's trying to drain something out. In fact, even if you don't have anything near 9 degrees Virgo, what house in your natal chart does the sign of Virgo come through? Because that is the theme of your life where that drain point is ultimately trying to take something away. Okay, so there's that. Let's go on to body parts. Okay, so the sign of Capricorn. I mean, if you just look at a chart of the parts of the body that the signs rule, you're going to see the Capricorn rules the knees, which, yes, Capricorn definitely rules the knees. You might want to be a little bit mindful with your knees in the days surrounding this transit. Also, Capricorn does have an influence on the gallbladder. I would be mindful if you're somebody who's dealing with gallbladder issues, or maybe you don't have a gallbladder, you might want to be a little bit careful in the days surrounding this transit. I wouldn't be putting things in our body that would try to make bile come through or something like that. So anyway, those are kind of minuscule things that I wouldn't put too much emphasis on. However, the sign of Capricorn really kind of rules over the structure of the body, the skeleton, the bones. And this is because Saturn is what rules over minerals. Okay. Saturn hardens. He's astringent and he hardens things. Being Capricorn's ruler, the sign of Capricorn is about like the calcification. It's a cold and dry energy. And so with that said, again, it's like building the structure of the human body. Sign of Capricorn can have an influence on the bones. For myself, I mean, of course, I am not a doctor and I'm not offering any kind of medical advice whatsoever, but some simple little tricks that I like to indulge in for just kind of trying to keep the bones a little bit extra strong. I like these guys right here. In fact, these are kind of dried up. I harvested these last year and made a tincture with it. This is horsetail, which horsetail, there's several different varieties of horsetail, and some of them are actually a little bit toxic. So you might want to be careful if you're somebody who's going out and harvesting things on your own, but you can buy horsetail as a supplement. Again, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm not allowed to offer medical advice. However, they've got a lot of silica in there. In fact, I know women who even take horsetail supplements for their hair, but also it's great for bones, keeping bones healthy. Okay, now also this cold and dry energy tends to have an effect on the skin. Now, certainly this is not for everybody in the world, but for a lot of us in the world, this time of year, it's a very cold and dry energy. Maybe not if you're living in Mexico or Florida or in New Zealand or Australia, or that sort of thing. But for a lot of us, we'll notice dry skin really this time of year. I am definitely one of those people, which is interesting because I don't normally deal with dry skin, but right around December, like the last couple weeks of December going through January and February, I do notice that my skin tends to get a little dry. So of course we can apply moisturizer and all kinds of interesting things. I personally, I'll just tell you this, most lotion, like if you're just going to a regular old grocery store and buying, whatever, Suave lotion or something like that, even Dove, there's chemicals in there that I just personally don't want to put on my skin. If I do use moisturizer, I'll use either like an olive oil or a coconut oil or a jojoba oil or something like that. There are some really high quality lotions out there, but I just prefer the stuff. I don't like to put anything on my skin that I wouldn't put in my mouth. And I know that sounds really weird, but that's just the way I am. And even before I knew things about like bad chemicals and that sort of thing, I was always like that. I never put lotion on my skin, but I've always dealt with dry skin this time of year, and I know a lot of people do. So something that I started doing about 3 years ago, and this right here is burdock tea. Now, I will say this, that fresh burdock is way more potent and you're going to get way better results with fresh burdock. But I've been putting burdock, making burdock tea. And personally, I like to add calendula to it, calendula and burdock tea, because the burdock root, I guess the simplest way to describe this is it opens up the cells. It brings a moisture to the skin from the inside out. And if you're drinking it with calendula tea, I have not had to put any sort of, moisture on my body at all throughout the sense going back. I mean, now we're in January. This is January 11th today. I haven't put any moisturizer on my face or my hands or anything like that. And I do think it has a lot to do with the fact that I've been doing very regularly burdock with calendula tea. So I didn't bring my calendula tea up here because I just didn't think about it. But calendula tea is very easy to find. It's usually like orange or yellow flowers. I always recommend going with organic. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not making any recommendations. Always check in with your healthcare practitioner and do research before you put anything into your body. So there's that. Now, as far as gemstones go, the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Capricorn is garnet, which I do love garnet. I don't have anything prominent in the sign of Capricorn. I have Juno in Capricorn, which is not a lot of strength for Capricorn energy. And so I do like to work with garnet quite a bit, especially if I'm trying to tap into like willpower and strength and ambition to do things. In fact, I worked with garnet, and I should have grabbed this as well. Garnet and tiger's eye and tiger's iron when I was first starting to like build my business, when I was starting to put together a website and starting to put together a YouTube channel. I really did sit and meditate with garnet and tiger's eye and tiger's iron quite a bit to tap into that ambition. Garnet is really, really good for that. But some other ones to mention here. This right here is malachite. I bring it out all the time because malachite resonates beautifully with the sign of Capricorn, but really it resonates beautifully with almost every single zodiac sign. It's a beautiful stone. It's mostly copper, super, super protective. In fact, it's probably like the best old reliable. I love malachite. Now, also, I'm going to bring this one out. I don't bring this one out very much. This is smoky quartz. And the reason I don't bring it out very much is because most people know what smoky quartz looks like. But smoky quartz is also really great, especially for the sign of Capricorn. But one of the reasons I love smoky quartz is because it's protective and it's an amplifier. Okay, when we take something like this right here, obsidian, is very, very protective. This right here is a super amplifier. Okay, so that if you think about the color combination here in smoky quartz, that's why it is an amplifier, and it's also a protector. So I do very much enjoy working with smoky quartz. I've got a ton of little pieces all over my house, but it really does resonate beautifully with that sign of Capricorn. So that's what I'm going to be working with for this new moon. Now, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And if you would like to schedule a reading with me, you can schedule through my website, which is erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.